Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Heritage Live. My name is Joelle Wyminga, and I am the Operations Coordinator at Coquitlam Heritage. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we will be doing a little question and answer at the end of the video here. So if you are on Zoom, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen called Q&A, and you can send your questions in through there. Or if you're watching through the Facebook live stream, you can put your questions in the comments and I'll keep track of them. And we will do a little question and answer at the end. Now, without any further ado, I will hand you over to our Heritage Manager, Tannis Koskela.
Hello, welcome back to another Facebook Live at Mackin House. We're back here in the dining room and with the able assistance again of Miggy in the background. He's going to be telling me that I'm doing stuff wrong probably. So today we are going to talk a little bit we're going to give a little teaser for the new exhibits that's going to be at the house here. The exhibit is going to be called Deconstructed, the Hidden History of Everyday Objects. And we're going to be featuring various things throughout the bottom floor of the museum. When we open the museum again, it's going to be only the ground floor because of COVID, so that everyone is able to do a one-way tour coming in one side and going out the other, so that other guests can follow behind and no one has to come into close contact. So that is going to be opening on September 26th. So today, I'm going to give you an example of the sort of things that we're going to be doing in the house. And the topic that I'm going to use is not one that's going to be featured in the house. So this is just sort of a sneak peek at the type of thing we're going to do in deconstructing everyday objects. I'm going to begin this one with a little clue. There's a quote from Dorothy Parker, who was a humorist and poet and writer back in the 20s. And she made the statement that men seldom make passes at girls who wear glasses. Well, I beg to differ, Dorothy. If you only knew the history behind the glasses, you might have a different opinion. Now I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually read, but I had to have them off for my little joke there. So Dorothy Parker didn't really know, apparently, or didn't care too much about the history of glasses. But the history of glasses goes back way into history to the ancient Greeks and the Romans, who didn't have glasses per se, but they were studying vision and how the eye works. And they do have references to early magnifiers, but not really glasses. So that's as far back as optical science has gone. And a lot of Arabic scholars also studied it as well. But the first real magnifying lens is often accredited to a man named Roger Bacon, who was a friar in England I forgot to put the date, way back when in the Middle Ages. But other cultures also developed glasses around the same time in Italy, Germany, and China. None of these glasses had frames, and they were held in front of the face with your hand. So they'd just be a lens, or usually only one lens, and they'd hold it up in front of their eye. But the next development in glasses was the way to hold them on your face, to free up your hands so that you can do other things. They had all kinds of fancy ways of doing that. Some people attached them to their hats so that they'd come down from the hat. Some people held them on their forehead with ribbons or belts. There's also some evidence that says that people put them on a metal forehead frame. And it just makes me think of those Frankenstein movies where they had the metal thing on the guy's head when he's getting electrocuted to put life into Frankenstein. But they had metal frames that they put on their heads. And they also mounted them in odd objects that they happened to have on a regular basis, like fans or walking sticks or watch fobs. So to begin with, I'm going to show you a small slideshow that Miggy has put together for me. I'm going to try to look at the camera instead of the slideshow, so bear with me if I do happen to look the wrong way. So the first picture I have here is this one of the Inuit snow glasses. So this is an early version of glasses that the Inuit realized they would need in order to prevent the glare on the snow causing snow blindness, which is a fairly painful condition. So those can really be considered one of the first pairs of sunglasses. This pair that is on the screen is made from elk horn, caribou horn, and the sinew from a caribou is the strap. And see if I can figure this out, Miggy. There's the next one. This one is similar to the first pair of glasses. They were two lenses that were held on a frame that you would hold the bottom in front of your face. So those ones date back to China. No, I don't have a date for those ones, but they're quite old. And you can see that one of the lenses is missing. The next picture I have is two lenses that are held in a half frame in the hand. And this one is from China in 1801. And you can see how it would work holding it in your hand, and it must have folded up fairly flexibly so that it could be put in that little box. These ones were called scissor glasses. Like the ones before were also considered scissor glasses. So those would be some of the earlier kinds. The pince-nez was one that was, this picture is a pair of pince-nez from England in 1875. Pince-nez meaning in French, pinch nose. And you can see that it can be opened up and attached to your nose. They must have been fairly uncomfortable, and I suspect people didn't wear them all that often. Calvin Coolidge and Teddy Roosevelt were both known for wearing the pince-nez, although Teddy Roosevelt's particular brand of pince-nez was called an Oxford. So here he is wearing an Oxford back in his time. And you can see at this point, most of the frames, with the exception of this one, the lens frames on this one are tortoiseshell, but with most of them, the lens frames are just wire. So this is a monocle, and the monocles, oh, I was gonna bring something out to try for that monocle, wasn't I, Miggy? The monocle was just a lens that you could pop into your eye and hold it into your eye with the muscles around your eye socket. And that one has a gutter that you can see was on the side. Oh, you can't see me pointing at that. The gold rim around the lens, you can see it protrudes a little bit so that makes it easier to grip with the eye muscles. And this one's a little bit out of order. Oh, this is a lorgnette. I thought I had no, this is a Quisling glass. The Quisling glass was a monocle, but it also had a reflective mirror to allow for a rear view. So that was a strange little thing. So you could have that on your eye, but you could also somehow or other, I'm not entirely sure how that worked, see what was going on behind you. Then there was the lorgnette. Oh, this is the one that I thought was coming up. The captions are out of order. This is Chekhov wearing a pince-nez. So he was a Russian writer, and he's wearing his pince-nez there. He looks like the look on his face looks like it probably isn't very comfortable at all. This is a lorgnette, and lorgnettes were held in the hand. They were a two-frame setup. And this one, you can see it folds back into the handle, so you could carry it in your purse without damaging the glasses part. But when you needed it, you could flip open the glasses, hold the handle in front of your hand. And there were some pretty fancy lorgnettes. This is a different style of a lorgnette. And here's a really fancy one. I think this would be the kind you would take to a fancy party or maybe the opera. And you can just see some old lady holding up her lorgnette with the bejeweled handle showing ostentatiously, looking around at everybody to see what they were wearing. Here's another example of a lorgnette as well. This is a drawing of one, but you can see that they came in lots of different styles. And then I have another picture here. It is not an optical device, but it is a device that created an optical device. It was made in 1961 out of a toy set from, the guy was from Germany. His name was Otto Wichterl, and he created this machine out of his children's toy set, like a mechano set, a bicycle dynamo, and a bell transformer. And this was the first model that he made with the help of his wife in his kitchen to produce contact lenses. So that is the first contact lens centrifugal casting apparatus model. So that's the end of the slideshow for this moment. Some of the other things that I don't have pictures of to show you are a perspective glass, which is basically a single lens on a ribbon, and it was used for distance viewing like binoculars. And then glasses frames became the norm, and they've been big business ever since. In the 1900s, steel frames were the most popular. But they also used gutta percha, which is the sap from not the sap, it's a resin that comes from the outer bark of the gutta percha tree, or a rubber tree. So that is refined and made into plastics, and it can be molded into the shape of whatever you need. So they used those for glasses frames. And then in the 1920s and 30s, tortoiseshell and horn-rimmed glasses became really, really popular, and celluloid was invented and used to mimic these products. I have one of my old hair clips here, and still to this day, they're mimicking the look of tortoiseshell to make hair accessories and glasses frames. So this is imitation, imitation tortoiseshell. Glasses with arms that came across the temples were not developed until 1728, but even then they were worn with a string around the neck, and they didn't incorporate the curve that we're familiar with these days. And another watershed in glasses history was World War II, when sunglasses and glasses, but particularly sunglasses, were issued to military personnel by the millions, particularly by the United States. So now I have another short slideshow to talk about some of the, before I go into the slideshow of the various fashions, I'm going to take a little break from just talking at you to showing you a few of the optical devices that we have here at Mackin House. So the creation of lenses in general led to a lot of innovations in optical devices. One of the earliest ones is this thing here, which is called a magic lantern. And the magic lantern had a lens here, and this was a chimney. Inside the magic lantern, there was room for a lantern, which caused the light to shine through the lens. And in front of the lens, they would put small glass slides like this one. And they usually had little short stories on them. And it would be like having a slideshow, but with drawn images, because they didn't have the same photography techniques. So this one here shows the picture of a bird's nest, the sun coming up, kid climbing up to the bird's nest, and the mother bird getting mad at the kid for bothering the chicks. Some of them were pretty rudimentary. Here's a guy, he's riding on a horse, and he gets thrown off. I think you can see that there. So he's at 4 stages. So you would move this slowly through in front of the lens of the magic lantern to tell the story. See, I'll show you one more of those. Let's see, we got, this one has, let's look at this one here. This one is a picture of, it looks like a hunter going out for a warthog, and he gets pushed up onto the, I can't get the, I'm trying to get the reflection right so you can see the picture. He ends up hanging from a signpost as he's unsuccessful in his hunt, I guess. I guess you could make up whatever stories you liked about them, and maybe some of them had bearing on people's everyday lives, and they can sit around and expound on the different adventures they'd had that were similar to that. So that's the magic lantern. And then there was, and here's a pair of glasses. These ones came from 1929 from the Pittman's store in Vancouver. You can see the logo on the case. It was located on Hastings Street West. And you can see that these glasses are basically just glass with a simple wire frame attached to the lens at the center and on the sides. And these ones have the curved handles, but you can see there's not a lot of finesse on those curves. And I guess you'd kind of have to make it fit your own eyes. So that's an early pair of glasses. Then we talked about magnifiers. Here's a nice little magnifier. And you actually can see it magnifying the wallpaper behind me. Oh, maybe I can magnify my eye. Let's see, can you see it? Oh, almost. There. And then there were these things. And these things were called stereoscopes, or they are called stereoscopes. So this one has a foldable handle here. So you can fold that down so you can hold it like this. And then you can look through the double lenses at the card, the photograph cards that's inserted in it. So the photograph cards were two identical images. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And when you look through the lenses, it blended the two images so that you'd get a three-dimensional image. A lot of them picked scenes that were appropriate for getting a deeper perspective or a 3D image. So for instance, this one, I like this one because it's four girls. Could have been me and my sisters having a pillow fight. That's me at the bottom there that got whacked in the face probably. And these girls you can see are at all different depths in the room. Some are close, some are far away. So when you had a 3D image of that, it would be fairly distinctive and interesting. And a fairly new, fascinating technology. I like this one too. This is called the wreck of the daily news. So when you get the 3D image of this, the little girl's face is going to pop right out from the paper in 3 dimensions. Be pretty exciting to see. And then there were things like scenic scenes. This is Mount Sir Donald, Matterhorn of the North American Alps in British Columbia. So you can see there's the depth of the picture behind the woman. She's sitting on a little rock so that she's going to stand out against the background. And the 3-dimensional image would have been quite effective. And here's one last one I'll show you. It's called Mrs. Brown Returns, Unexpected. And what did she find? Mr. Brown cavorting with the maid. So that would have been quite scandalous. I don't know who would have shown that in their parlor back in the early days. So the stereoscope, stereo because of the two lenses, was a fairly interesting mechanism, and you could focus it by moving the card on the stand back and forth, so whoever was looking at it could focus it to their own eyes. Here's a slightly more extravagant, fancy version of one. This one lifts up like this. It has a stand that comes up at the back. The card goes in. Where's the one that holds that up? Yeah, it goes like that. You can hold it like this, and the card goes in the stand here when you want to use it. Oh no, it hooks here. It's got the hooks right at the front that hold it up, right there. There, I thought I missed something. So this thing pulls up here at the back, and you can put the card underneath and focus on it. You can look at it through here, or you can look at it through here. So this is a different version of a stereoscope. Some other optical devices that were developed with lenses when lenses became perfected were, well, you could take your lorgnette to the opera and peer at people through the stick that you're holding the lenses with, or you could take your little pair of opera glasses. These would have been small enough for a lady to put in her purse. It's made of brass on the here and here. You can focus it at the center, and it was useful. Oh, it's got little loops for strings on the side as well. And it would have been nice to take to sporting events or different things that you might, or even on a hike. Although I doubt that they would have done that because it was too expensive an item. This little thing is a pair of binoculars. It's quite heavy. You wouldn't really think of backpacking around with that with the equipment that is available today, but you can see that it's nicely made and you can focus in the middle, just like our binoculars today, but slightly less sophisticated. This pair of binoculars came with its own leather case. So this is the case for it. So those are some of the optical devices that we have here at Mackin House. We're going to be looking at another slideshow of some of the fashions of images throughout the years. So as soon as Miggy gets over to set me up for the slideshow, we'll look at that. Here he comes now. So there's been lots of trends in sunglasses and regular glasses, and we certainly won't be touching on all of them right now, but I'll show you some of the notable trends over the 20th century that have become popularized for one reason or another. Here's a picture of Clark Kent. Clark Kent popularized the square frame for glasses, and you can see him there leaning over Lois Lane and her looking up solicitously for his advice, no doubt, being a man back in the 20s or 30s. So his glasses were a square frame. They were a dark color, probably tortoiseshell. They could have been horn. They could have been made from celluloid. Nobody ever specified what Clark Kent's glasses were made of. Another popular trend in the 20th century was in the 1960s with John Lennon, who popularized the granny glasses that were very haute mode with the hippies, if you can say such a thing about hippies. They wore granny glasses, which were actually a rerun of the older style of glasses, almost like the ones that I just showed you there, except for these ones have the wire frame around them. So they were round and they were called granny glasses. Then there was the spate of aviator glasses, which seemed to be particularly popular with musicians, although General MacArthur wore them. The center page on that picture are fans of Freddie Mercury, the frontman for the band Queen. And though Freddie Mercury is only the cutout at the front, the men in the background who are all his fans are wearing his signature aviator glasses. And of course, Elvis wore them. Jeff Lynne from the band ELO on the right in the purple. George Michael top left, and Slash, the one with the top hat in the bottom. They all wore aviator glasses, as well as Tom Cruise, Roger Waters, and Michael Jackson. After the, well, not after the aviator glasses, but in tandem with the aviator glasses, some people wore flip-up sunglasses. If you couldn't afford a full pair of prescription sunglasses, and I believe you can still buy them today, you could have bought a pair of clip-ons that could sit on the top of your glasses and flip down. Most people would know what those are all about. The next picture is of Malcolm X. Malcolm X popularized the brown line glasses, and you can see the top of the glasses were brown line. And he and many other people during his heyday wore the brown line glasses. I've actually seen several pictures of people during that era who wore the brown line glasses. This one, my mother will recognize. Jackie Onassis wore the big oversized sunglasses, late 50s, early 60s. And my mother had a pair of them. They were pretty hip. And so there's Jackie O wearing them. And Janis Joplin also wore them. Two very different people with a very, very similar style of glasses. I kind of like to see Jackie O dressed like Janis Joplin and vice versa and see what kind of an effect it had. Another kind of glasses that were very popular, and I believe my mother also had a pair of these, were cat eye glasses. So they were shaped to look like the shape of, they were pointed at the top. I'm not really sure why they called them cat eye glasses, because they're not shaped like cat eyes, but that's what they came to be called. This is the guy, Otto Wichterl, who invented the centrifugal machine to make contact lenses out of his children's building set. So he was a scientist, he was an optician, he was all different kinds of things. And there's another pair of some fancy green cat eye glasses. They're pretty fancy. So that's the end of that little short slideshow. I'm just going to take my glasses off for a minute so I can find my page spot on the page here. And the next thing I'm going to talk about are 3D glasses. So 3D glasses were a whole different kettle of fish. And the science that went into those was pretty interesting. The ancestor to the 3D glasses that we know, the ones that have the little red lens and the blue lens and the cardboard frame, the ancestors were developed in 1800s by Charles Wheatstone. And he discovered that if you took two images, roughly photographed at a distance similar to the distance between two eyes. So for instance, if I'm going to photograph this, I'm going to photograph it once right here, then shift the object the distance between two eyes and photograph it again. And then those two images, if you looked at both of them at the same time, or you merged them, and you let your eyes go slightly out of focus, you would get sort of a 3D image of that, whatever it was. Kind of like those magic eye books that were popular back in the 80s when my children were little. They were just colorful images, but if you could stare at it just right and put your eyes out of focus, all of a sudden, a central image would pop out from the background. And it's the same principle that was used by Charles Wheatstone. So the next development after that was the stereoscope, which I showed you was that had the lenses that could blend two images. The stereoscope actually merged, or the stereoscope grew into the ViewMaster. I had a ViewMaster that was orange when I was a kid, thanks Mom and Dad. and I loved it. I would look at it for hours. So it operated on the same principle as the two images for the stereoscope. They came with these little round slides, and each slide opposite it had the same picture. So there's two the same, two the same, two the same as you go around the thing, and each one is in a different eye at the same time. So you have the same idea, the two images merging into one as you look through a single lens. The one that I really loved that I had was about the Wizard of Oz, and it had a really excellent 3D image of the Wicked Witch of the West in the Wizard of Oz getting water thrown on her, and she was melting. I'll never forget it. So the stereoscope was an ancestor, well, the stereoscope was the ancestor of the Viewmaster. It's just the same idea, upgraded to plastic and photograph techniques. And then after that came the invention of anaglyph images. Anaglyph images are what are used today with the cheap cardboard glasses that we use at the theaters to see 3D movies with the one red and one blue lens. So the anaglyph images are actually photographed, one through a red lens and one through a blue lens. And then these two images are combined to make a slightly blurry image. But then when it's viewed through the red and the blue lenses on the glasses, it becomes a clear three-dimensional image. Now, these techniques have certainly been improved on with technology, and they have involved things like polarization and other things that I won't go into today. It's a whole different story. And of course, I could digress and talk a little bit about virtual reality, but time doesn't allow for that kind of venture. But you can see that the lowly history of opticals and glasses can go over a lot of territory. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is, and then, yeah, I had my page out of order. I was going to talk about 13th century, they had reading stones. Oh no, we'll talk about the lens material next. So the lens materials, we usually think of glasses as being made out of glass, but in the early days when they were just starting to discover that things could alter what you see, back in the 7th century, they have discovered a stone that dates to that time. Let me rephrase that. They discovered a stone that dates to the 17th century recently that is called the Nimrod lens. And they're not sure if it really was used for opticals, but they think it was. It was a rock crystal. And there are statements from different people through history. The Greeks and the Romans talked about using crystals to put over top of things to make things magnified. And there is also evidence in Egyptian hieroglyphics that show things that could be simple lenses, but nobody really seems to know for sure just yet. In the 11th and 13th century, reading stones were used by monks, and the monks in particular that used them were the ones who were illuminating manuscripts with illustrations, and they would put the stones over their work to see the details and to make fine lines. But time went on and slowly lenses and their properties were understood and defined. And in fact, the German word for glasses is Brill. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation, but that's what it looks like when it's written, Brill. And that comes from the word for the beryl crystal, beryl, Brill. And that's the first crystal that was used as a lens. So the first glasses were invented as we know them in 13th century Italy. They were called rivet glasses because, like that pair that I showed you, the lenses were basically riveted onto the frames. In Venice, where they had a long tradition of glassmaking, it was decreed by one of the leaders in Venice at some point that all of the lens makers were to move out of the city to the town of Murano. And the reason for that was because the glassmaking requires a lot of furnaces for melting the silica that the lenses are made out of, and it was causing an unprecedented number of fires in a city mostly built of wood. So the glassmakers were sent to the town of Murano, and it has been a center for glassmaking ever since. In the early days in Murano, They made their trade real secret. They were called the Cristalleri. And if you were guilty of stealing any of their glass-making secrets, you could be punished by death. So they made their first major breakthrough with grinding a concave glass lens. And the two were placed in frames, riveted together. And even though they tried to keep it secret, of course, the invention was eventually copied. But distinct types of Murano glass have been created with varying recipes over the centuries, and they involve different substances and procedures, various types of chemistry. But the basic ingredients have changed very little since the beginning of glass production. The main ingredient for making glass is silica, which is found in common sand. So sand is the material you're going to need if you're going to make some glass. So now I have another little slideshow here to show you a few pictures of early lens making. Miggy's going to set me up here. The first picture that I have is a diagram of Leonardo da Vinci's invention for a lens grinder. I'm not entirely sure how it works. It didn't show on the image what all the different parts were. You can see there's a cog on the left at the upper halfway point that will turn the wheel, which I believe is the grinding stone. And down at the bottom, there's a circle flat on the floor with little divots around it. And I suspect that may be where he planned to do the lens grinding. But like many of Da Vinci's inventions, this one never saw production. But he was there before the rest of them, as he was with many things. The next picture is one of lens grinders at work. And you can see their little workshop. Looks like a really clean workshop. I don't know if that's just artistic license or what, but anyway, you can see different styles of lenses in the right side of the picture. So there's concave, convex, there's both, the fish eyes, there's all kinds that people made over the years, and a couple of the grinding and polishing tools at the bottom. And this one is some more lens grinding and optical tools. I couldn't tell you what all of them are, but you can see they're similar to the optical devices that I've shown you, and also just the kinds of tools you'd think might be used for grinding. This is a 19th century lens grinding machine, looks a little more sophisticated. And then during World War II, this picture of the Spence Lens Grinding Company was taken, and it shows a more sophisticated workshop. It's also very clean. I suppose maybe that's what they had to do to keep it clean for the glass. I guess you wouldn't want too many impurities floating around. So that's how the lenses were made. The next thing that I'm going to talk about, and there's tons we could go on and on about, but we're not going to because this is supposed to be relatively short, is some of the materials that have been used for frames over the years. And one of the most popular after wire was tortoiseshell. Tortoiseshell's lightweight. The material was considered culturally significant as good luck in China. And the material itself comes from the hawksbill tortoise or turtle. And it's been used for everything from, like I showed you, that hair clip. Where did I put my hair clip? It's down here. My hair clip. Oh, the hair clip. And it's been used for furniture. It's been used for jewelry, and been used for centuries since ancient Roman and Egyptian times. So processing tortoiseshell involved separating the shields, which is the colorful part that you see like this, from the bone of the tortoise or turtle shell. Then they used a combination of weight and heat to flatten the shields. And then once those are flattened, the material that is remaining can then be molded into whatever shape or thing that people want to use it for. Sometimes it can also be shaped on a lathe. It involves some finesse, apparently, to keep the tortoise shell from losing its color with all the heat that's been applied to it. However, they use the tortoise shell so much and so frequently that the trade in tortoise shell has been banned worldwide, and it's now protected under the CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. So the turtles are safe for the most part. I suspect there's probably people who still try and poach them, but they are safe, and I hope their numbers are recovering. So, and the other thing is people have used substitutes for this tortoise shell, like this plastic, and also stained horn material. So now we have one more slideshow before we conclude this little presentation. Miggy will set me up. And this one is just some pictures of the tortoise. So this is the hawksbill tortoise. And you can see on the back the color of the shell. So you can see around the edges where the color is similar to what is on my hair clip. And so that little thin layer is taken off of the shell. They're not doing it anymore, I hope, and used to do things like this drawer facing on this cabinet was made with the tortoise shell from a hawksbill turtle. This beautiful ornate comb was carved out of tortoise shell. And here is a lorgnette that is made from tortoise shell. So the handle, it's only got the one handle. You would have held it up in front of your eyes to see like a lorgnette. So that's basically all I'm going to go into about the history of glasses and what you can learn just from looking at the historic past of this one item. So we are going to have an exhibit in the house beginning September 26th, and it's going to be called Deconstructed, the Hidden History of Everyday Objects, as I mentioned earlier. And we're going to do similar things in the ground floor of the museum and talk about the hidden history of some of the things that we might just take for granted, one of them being the piano. There's also cutlery, and we might talk a little bit about the history of tobacco and smoking and some other things. So I hope that everyone that is seeing this has a chance to come out and learn a little bit about the rich history of the world through just some everyday objects. And of course, COVID allowing, there's always a chance that things could go awry. So that is the basic presentation for today. If anybody has any questions, please ask them now.
Awesome. Thank you, Tannis. So I'm just looking at our comments here, and it doesn't look like we have any specific questions yet. A lot of enthusiasm about what you were talking about, but no specific questions. Well,
that's all right.
Yeah, perfect. So I guess we can wrap up everything. Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you Tannis for all of the information about glasses. Of course, we are on all of the social media channels. We are on Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. So if you really enjoyed what you saw, feel free to like and subscribe to us there for more information on the exhibits that are coming up, especially Deconstructed, our exhibit that's opening in September. Yeah, so thank you everybody who came out to watch.
And I have one more thing to say, and that is Dorothy Parker with your boys don't make passes and girls who wear glasses, which my brother said to me once. Take that, Dorothy.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. And we hope to see you at Mackin House sometime in the future.